Royal Caribbean just launched Star of the Seas, one of the biggest ships in the world now. But how is it actually different than Icon of the Seas? Well, I went on Star of the Seas for over 10 days to research exactly what's new, different, and exactly the same. What I found out is that the two ships are far more similar than they are different, and it really boils down to three areas where these two ships truly differ that I found, and I'm going to break it all down for you. So I cruise a lot on Royal Caribbean, and what stood out to me isn't so much what's different about Star versus Icon, but how Royal Caribbean is tweaking what's already amazing about Icon. You're not going to find insane changes. Rather, I was surprised how much Star of the Seas relies on what works. So let's jump right into it, starting with where these ships sail from. That's a big difference. Icon of the Seas is based in Miami, where Star of the Seas is based in Port Canaveral. Royal Caribbean calls that Orlando. That's marketing speak because Orlando is a landlocked city, but Port Canaveral is the closest thing there. There are advantages to cruising out of both Miami or Port Canaveral, depending on which one is easier to get to, which one is cheaper to get to, and which area of the country you may be from. But truly, the itineraries are exactly the same because no matter which one you go to, it's a very easy embarkation process, so I really don't think the city it sails from should really be a factor in which ship to pick. The first area where Star of the Seas is different than Icon is going to be the entertainment. They're similar, but the shows are different on each ship. There are three main entertainment venues on both ships: the Royal Theater, the Aqua Theater, and Absolute Zero Ice Rink. Shows in Aqua Theater and Absolute Zero are similar on both ships. Despite having different themes and soundtracks, you'll see many of the same stunts, dives, jumps, and everything else they throw in there. The main difference in terms of the shows truly is the Broadway show in the Royal Theater. On Icon of the Seas, the Broadway show is The Wizard of Oz, and this is kind of a take on the original 1939 film, not the Broadway musical that came out since then. It's like Royal Caribbean's adaptation, if you will. But Star of the Seas has Back to the Future the musical, which is exactly the musical from the West End and Broadway. Both shows are really entertaining, but some guests may prefer seeing one over another. If Broadway shows are an important factor in cruising, you may want to take that in consideration. They're really good for both different reasons. I think Back to the Future may be a superior show because it's a true Broadway show and certainly has more production value to it, but Wizard of Oz is really good as well. Both ships do have entertainment throughout the ship that includes a lot of live entertainment that goes beyond simply a stage show. You're going to have dueling pianos, live jazz music in Central Park, and a variety of other live music performances, whether it's the pool band, the pub singer, schooner bar player. There is always something to have on board in terms of entertainment, and I'm really impressed by Royal Caribbean's commitment to live entertainment, so both ships certainly don't disappoint in that regard. The second area where you'll find some notable differences between Icon and Star are the dining options. They're almost all the same, but there are two major differences. Now, no matter which ship you're on, I love eating on a Royal Caribbean cruise, and most dining venues are exactly the same between both ships. You'll find the restaurants like the Windjammer Buffet, main dining room, and then of course some specific Icon class eateries like the Pearl Cafe and Surfside Bites. But the two differences that are worth noting, first and foremost, is the Aquadome Market. The Aquadome Market is the food hall concept. It was introduced on Icon of the Seas, and Star of the Seas has its own take on it. Both of them offer different foods from cuisines around the world. There are 5 stalls on each ship. 2, creme de la crêpe and feta Mediterranean, are offered on both ships. The other 3 differ from ship to ship. On Icon, you'll enjoy mac and cheese at Mac's, sandwiches at Toast and Garden, and Chinese classics at Ginger. On Star of the Seas, however, there's new options. You've got pig out barbecue, which is barbecue food, spicy Thai food at Mai Tai, and Latin American street food at La Cocinita. I tried both. I think I prefer the Aquadome Market on Star of the Seas. I really like the Thai food, and I was really surprised how much I like the barbecue food. I guess it's not that surprising because I do love portside barbecue on Oasis of the Seas, and this certainly was very similar to that. The other major dining change on Star of the Seas are the supper clubs do vary from each one. Now, this is an elegant, fine dining experience that takes about 2.5 to 3 hours to eat, and they're curated cocktails with regionally inspired menus. The concept is very similar between both ships, but they do differ in their theming. On Icon of the Seas, the Empire Supper Club features a 1920s New York theme, whereas Star of the Seas has the Lincoln Park Supper Club, and it has a 1930s Chicagoland theme. For the most part, though, the subtle variations between the Aquadome Market and the Supper Club don't really make a huge difference. I don't think anybody's truly booking one ship over the other because of the dining differences. So I would simply say that they're worth noting. There are differences there, especially when you go to, I think, the Aquadome market and you're expecting to find maybe Chinese food, but you find Thai or vice versa. But truly, it is worth trying out both because I was impressed by both for different reasons. The other main difference is going to be the artwork on board. Now, this is true of every single Royal Caribbean cruise ship. Royal Caribbean loves to have all the ships have a different art gallery and different selections around the ship. When you walk through the hallways, the staircases, even in some of the decks, you're going to find different artwork. There are murals, pieces, photographs, other things I can't even categorize, but there's lots of different art. Royal Caribbean wants its art to be a conversation piece, meaning not every single piece is going to be something that you're all going to like, but the idea is that maybe it makes you think. Maybe it makes you say something to somebody like, isn't that weird? Or I really love that piece. And whatever your reaction is, that is truly, I think, the point of good art, to evoke an emotion, positive or negative, but to get people talking about it. So if you go between the two ships, you will see differences. As an example, on the Royal Promenade, there are two different dogs on there because, of course, both ships have a chief dog officer. Probably should have mentioned that as a difference, but they're both golden retrievers. One is Sailor, one is Rover. Rover is on Icon of the Seas, and Sailor is on Star of the Seas. And there is a cute, if you want to call it that, statue of the dog on the Royal Promenade, and they're very different in terms of the statue that's featured there. There are also some really subtle differences that, unless you run a blog about Royal Caribbean, you probably wouldn't notice. First and foremost, there are robot vacuum cleaners on Star of the Seas. They don't exist on Icon as far as I'm aware. They're Bob and Betsy. Bob takes care of the hard surfaces. Betsy takes care of the carpeting. And this, I guess, is a new idea. I'm really not sure how functional these are, but they did run them a lot when I was on board. Something different. Also, there is one, that's right, one extra hot tub near the Aquadome Market. That's on Star of the Seas that you won't find on Icon of the Seas. So if you're keeping score at home, you've got that as well. There's also some very subtle changes in Surfside on Star of the Seas, where theoretically some of the water activation features are aimed at a slightly higher age group, like 7 to 10-year-olds. I'm not sure I can really tell the difference, but then again, I'm not a 7 to 10-year-old, so perhaps that's exactly what it's all about. So how do you choose between the two ships? Well, it may simply come down to a minor consideration. Like, there is not a fundamental difference between the two. It may come down to price, itinerary, or simply something that just makes you want to pick one or the other, and it's completely arbitrary. Star of the Seas launched about a year after Icon, but the pricing is pretty much going to be the same. There's very little differentiation in the cruise fares. Royal Caribbean basically sees both these ships as their crown jewels right now, and you're going to pay a premium no matter which one you're going on. For most 7-night itineraries, you can pay between $1,300 and $2,000 per person for an inside cabin. There really isn't much variation unless you're willing to go during off times of the year, like maybe in September, the month of May, January, outside, of course, of New Year's, basically times of the year when everyone's back in school and we just had a big vacation period that preceded it. Nonetheless, you really always want to book your cruise as far in advance as you can to get the best possible price. As more people book the cruises, prices go up. So it's really important to book those in advance to lock something in. Overall, the ship is basically identical, and either option is really fantastic choice. Remember, Icon of the Seas was a game changer in a good way, and it introduced so many amazing things that Royal Caribbean was like, why mess with what works? There are small differences between the ships, but they're more alike than they're different. They have the same layout, neighborhoods, pools, activities, and onboard thrills. Differences in the artwork, dining venues, and entertainment are really minor in the big picture of your vacation. In addition, despite having different home ports, they visit the same exact itineraries. If you're truly stuck choosing between two ships, I'd argue there are two things to consider. One, where you prefer to embark your cruise ship, Miami or Port Canaveral, and two, the price difference between the ships for that particular week. If you're hoping to sail in mid-March, and Star of the Seas is $500 more expensive than Icon, well, you're better off choosing the latter. But likewise, if cruise fares are similar, but a flight to Orlando is $300 cheaper than Miami, well then, pick Star of the Seas. When one of our viewers, Hannah, asked me which ship she should go on, I told her, no matter which one you pick, your parents are going to have a great time and have no problem bringing you to the arcade on both ships and letting you play as many video games as you want. Hopefully, this comparison helps you figure out which is the right choice for you. And coming up next, we have a look at Star of the Seas from deck to deck, forward to back, to give you an exact ship tour of what you can expect when you get on board Star of the Seas. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. That way, YouTube lets you have a brand new video to share. This has been Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com, and we'll talk again real soon.